The new CXN100 streamer from Cambridge Audio is going to be a popular product, no doubt. So I wanted to do an A to B comparison with the Eversolo DMP-A6, which is also currently a very popular product. But can we say that one of them is a winner? Price is £900, $1,100 or 1,050 euros for the CXN100, and for the Eversolo £760 or $860 or euros. This CXN100 replaces the outgoing CXN version 2, which I used to own. Both of them come in a lunar grey finish. I think Cambridge Audio were offering a black limited edition finish. I'm not quite sure why they don't offer that as standard, because it seems to me most people's hi-fi is black, but answers on a postcard with that one. Panel gap fit of the Eversolo is marginally better than the Cambridge Audio when you run your finger across the panel gaps. The Eversolo is made out of a nice slabbed aluminium case on all sides with cutout logos that have been milled into the aluminium, and the CXN100 is made out of a front aluminium faceplate and then this ply metal wraparound case. So certainly on build quality, the Eversolo has it. Neither of these units come with remote controls, which may be a frustration to some, although I would say you can actually buy them as an aftermarket add-on. But to go over quickly the use cases of these to the uninitiated, the first use case could be as a streaming preamp using the onboard DAC and single-ended RCA or balanced XLR analog outputs and the front volume control in use with a power amplifier, or you can use them conventionally as streamers with a fixed full volume output to a preamp or integrated amplifier and using the same connections, or alternatively you could use them purely as a digital transport to another DAC, so improving the DAC in these units and using their own digital outputs. The CXN100 uses an ESS9028 Q2M DAC chip in a single stereo configuration, whereas the Eversolo uses two ESS9038 Q2M DAC chips in dual mono configuration, which means one per channel. Both of these streamers offer PCM audio rates up to 768 kHz 32-bit and DSD 512. We cannot, I don't think, give much truck to the different DAC chips being used to imply that one should sound better than the other, because obviously lots comes down to the analog output stage and the power supply, and on the subject of dual DACs, how well these streamers deal with crosstalk. But on the issue of audio quality, the Cambridge Audio doesn't upsample its analog and SOL optical and coax digital outputs, whereas the Eversolo does on the same digital outputs, but additionally it has a USB digital output up to 768 kHz 32-bit. Debates aside about whether upsampling actually matters, if you decide to upgrade your DAC at a later stage and use the digital outputs of either of these streamers, then having that ability of an upsampled signal that just works better with some other DACs, as I sometimes find in my reviews, obviously there's going to be a benefit there. The CXN100 can be used as a quasi-server with its USB-A input, which is on its rear back panel. Cambridge Audio moved the socket from the front on the version 2 to the rear on this CXN100. Eversolo, in contrast, has the capability to use on the DMP-A6 a NVMe M.2 lose my voice, solid state drive up to 4 terabytes, I think they improved it from 2 terabytes to 4 terabyte capability with an update. But Cambridge Audio say on their support pages that you could experience cataloging issues in using large USB drives due to memory constraints. So I think on paper, given the differences in the drives that are available to be used with these two streamers, the Eversolo has it so far as use as a proper server. That said though, I didn't experience cataloging issues myself because my library is relatively small, and additionally, I don't know the processing specs between these units because whilst Eversolo state the specs of the processor used in the DMP-A6, I don't think Cambridge Audio do from their available online resources. Both of these streamers have coaxial and optical digital inputs for adding additional digital sources. There's no HDMI eARC, which might be a frustration to some. The Eversolo has a USB-C digital input, which is unusual, but that adds to connection to the plethora of USB-C sources that there are nowadays. This contrasts the Cambridge having a USB-B input for connection to PCs, and Macs acts as a slave. Obviously, you need to add Windows drivers if you're going to be using a Windows PC. The Eversolo has a USB-A OTG socket that's used for transferring music from the solid state drive to a PC or Mac, or you can use it in the other direction, much like the Cambridge, as a USB music drive. And so when you look at all of this, they're pretty evenly matched so far as connections are concerned. I would reiterate though that I'm disappointed that the Cambridge doesn't have a USB digital output for connection to a DAC, because I think there are some terrific DACs nowadays over USB. In use, I did find myself noticing that the display brightness and vividity of the colours of the Eversolo is much better than this CXN100. Cambridge Audio actually improved the display from the version 2 to this one. The version 2 had a very grainy, blocky display, but the Eversolo is like an iPhone screen, and the Cambridge is sort of like an older smartphone type screen of about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. The colours are slightly washed out with the Cambridge, and you can tell there's not as high dynamic range. It's a bit of a shame really, because I don't know for the life of me why the Cambridge Audio engineers didn't go out, find out the parts used in the Eversolo and simply put them into the Cambridge. This is such an important part of the overall use and aesthetics of the product, and something that a consumer is going to see for what is, I would have thought, quite limited additional cost. The DMP-A6 has a bigger screen in what is a smaller case, so it takes up less real estate in your rack. That's quite a smart thing to do, but it means that you can read it easier from fairly standard couch listening distances to your hi-fi system. If you select the text display option of the Eversolo, you can see album information very clearly. If you press the I button, information button, on the front of the Cambridge Audio, it changes the display, but you don't get a choice over the size of the text. So all of this makes it the case that the people that have designed this Eversolo have clearly put more into the user experience. The Eversolo is seamless in switching from content and sources, so whether it's DLNA, Roon, AirPlay for example, as is the Cambridge I should say, but I actually had issues for about 2 to 3 hours when I first started using this Cambridge in terms of being able to find it in Roon. So whilst the Eversolo was easily viewable and selectable in Roon, this Cambridge wasn't, and that went on for some time, and obviously that's indicative of there not being a problem with my network, but the player itself. Also, I had issues when I was trying to Roon or AirPlay content to the Cambridge, where it was playing that content, but its own Stream Magic app, which is the proprietary app you get with this unit, that app was still trying to find the unit. They both have Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, and are MQA capable, also AirPlay 2 and Roon ready. Whilst the CXN100 is Chromecast supported, the Eversolo isn't, so conceivably that could be a deal breaker. Additionally, both can deal with Bluetooth and both have internet radio. But the CXN100 has Tidal, Quobuzz and Deezer built into its Stream Magic app for native bit-perfect streaming, whereas the Eversolo has Tidal built into its own app for similar bit-perfect native streaming. And additionally, if you load up other services, you do so via the Eversolo's Android operating system, which crucially means using Eversolo's EOS audio engine that you can avoid Android down conversion of audio streams. This basically means that the Eversolo gives you access to way more services at bit-perfect native form. You might be thinking, well, I don't like logging into streamers as if I'm logging in on a phone because I'm a bit of a technophobe, or that you're not going to be using the touchpad of the Eversolo because you're not going to be using it at your rack. Obviously, these issues are circumvented by the cast feature in the Eversolo app, where the screen and touching ability of the screen is essentially mirrored. If you don't use it that way, then you can use the conventional browse and playback features of the Eversolo app. But it's important to stress the Cambridge CXN100 screen isn't of a touchpad type, and you're also restricted in the sense that you only get the Stream Magic app out of the box, so to speak. So far as Tidal is concerned, both of these streamers support the newer 2448 to 24192 Tidal high-res FLAC files, which you can play back via Tidal Connect or from these streamers' own individual apps, but additionally in Roon, because remember, both of these streamers are Roon ready. In the Cambridge, the sample and bit rates are shown in the display for these file types, but additionally for the Eversolo, you get the same information, and if it's a 192 file, max FLAC comes up in the display. I think this is much like on phones where you see the text max to show the maximum sample rates. I'd challenge any opinion that states that the Eversolo app is complicated to use and that the Cambridge app is the opposite, or that the Cambridge is more of a kind of streaming CD player substitute, suggesting that the Cambridge is really for those that want streaming simple, because the Eversolo app is just as easy to use, the player is just as easy to use, the unit itself, and if you want to dive into more complicated features of the Eversolo, you can. The Stream Magic app is basic in my opinion, and it does have some bugs with the software. They're small things, but sometimes a little bit annoying. On the other hand, in my experience and use of the Eversolo app, it's been bomb-proof, and it's clear to me that Eversolo are putting way more into app development and updates than Cambridge Audio are, which seems odd for the fact that these are streaming products, and that's one of the most important areas. An example of this, a couple of months ago, Eversolo brought out a new app update. You get quick access widgets from the main page, so you can easily select certain streaming services. There are also new album artwork type displays with rotating albums, and of course, the killer new feature, parametric EQ and graphic EQ. These features the Cambridge Audio doesn't have in its app. Additionally, there are balance controls. Using these streamers' analog outputs into my Hagel H390 in use of my PMC speakers, you notice that the Eversolo has a slightly more layered and separated approach to sound than the Cambridge. Also, it's more open and forward in its presentation as regards to treble, The Cambridge, on the other hand, is a little bit more laid back in this area. The Cambridge still excels at treble, but slightly less so compared to the Eversolo. But I'd premise this with saying that it's only when I'm playing more forward recordings do I slightly prefer the Cambridge's sound, assuming though I haven't turned on the Eversolo's EQ, which by the way doesn't have any effect on sound quality because it's done in the DSP and is lossless. I think that the Cambridge, on the other hand, has a slightly less resolute approach to resolution, such that if you're playing balanced recordings, it doesn't give the same visceral and as exuberant an experience as the Eversolo, if that makes sense. The Eversolo is more emotive to the Cambridge's, I'm not going to say unaffecting approach, because the Cambridge isn't like that at all, but it has a more sober-sided approach to resolution, relative of course. Soundstage is wider with the DMP-A6, but I felt that the Cambridge Audio represented soundstage in a higher and deeper fashion. Bass frequencies are also more dynamically astute with the Eversolo, such that if you're playing something like an electronic drum machine, the bass frequencies seem to stretch out and return in comparison to the Cambridge Audio's fuller and slightly deader approach to bass. I also think that the Eversolo is slightly the better transiently dynamic performer of the two. In another system using Totem Acoustics Bison Tower speakers that I've reviewed before, again using my H390, a more neutral approach to bass and treble, I preferred the Eversolo, again with the EQ always off, not turning it on and off depending upon the recording and how toppy the recording is. The Eversolo was giving a greater dynamic presentation again, and more heft in range, I'd say. This is no more apparent than when you try tracks like the Narcotic Suite Skyline by The Prodigy. If you don't like The Prodigy, try that track, because if you like music that pleases an audiophile system, as we all like to do now and again, try it, because you'll be surprised. It's hard to separate these streamers out on the basis of using them on analog output duty, simply because the differences are so small, despite the fact I'd say that my preference is with the Eversolo for both of the systems and speakers I mentioned. Obviously, speaker preference and overall preference is going to play a part, but I'd premise that comment with the fact that now Eversolo have brought out EQ, such issues of matching and preference are almost inconsequential because of this EQ. You can't say that the Cambridge is less bright to the Eversolo being more bright, as you see sometimes in YouTube comments, simply because of this EQ capability.
The DMP-A6 can sound lean and even bright in certain systems, whereas the Bluesound Node X has a distinctly warm character. That means that some care needs to be taken with partner equipment.
I think that if you listen to both of these products in a dealer, in an unfamiliar acoustic environment with alien equipment partnered with these streamers, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two of them. I suspect I wouldn't. So if you're after the finer differences between these two products and you want to A to B them, go to a dealer always that allows you to try at home before you buy, or allow you to have their loan stock. Personally, my feeling of dealers is that if they don't do that, they're not actually adding any value other than being of transactional value in terms of allowing you to buy particular products. So always get it in your environment home first when you're buying pricey electronics before you commit to buy. And if dealers don't allow you to do that, don't use them. Go to dealers that will, because I'm sure wherever you are, you will find dealers that do that. Into an Alna S9C Pro DAC and their matching SC1 clock, I prefer the digital coaxial output of the Eversolo versus the same output connection of the Cambridge Audio. When using the higher audio quality output of the Eversolo's USB connection, it is much easier to discern a better audible quality difference into the same Auna combo, which Auna told me is to do with the fact that the DAC requires a higher clock frequency for more accurate processing in the DAC's phase lock loop. I just wanted to add a quick comment about the FiiO R9 streamer, which has just arrived. I thought I'd put this in the mix in terms of sound quality. I haven't done a full assessment on it yet, so this isn't a full opinion, obviously, and I will be reviewing it in due course. But against these other two streamers, certainly sonically, the R9 is the improver, as you'd probably expect. It's a lot more expensive. I tried it with the matching PL50 linear power supply. There is a sense of greater ease to the music, there's greater depth, and transient dynamics are better. Obviously, this is a streamer that's meant to be used in a hi-fi system and perhaps more predominantly as a desk-based headphone hub for your headphones and the rest of your system. Even if you're inclined to buy the Cambridge Audio CXN100, maybe you're a fanboy or you're just inclined to buy that brand, you've still got to get over all of the Eversolo's pluses, access to more higher quality music streaming services, a better improved USB audio output of higher quality, less rack real estate space is needed, EQ, better build quality, full server functionality. But beyond all of that, the Eversolo offers better ability to interface with your music by way of its more vibrant touchpad screen. And that is basically a reason to buy the Eversolo, because it means that you're going to use your hi-fi more. That is essentially what we're doing, listening to music. It comes to none other than that if you reduce it all down. But beyond all of that, you're getting the Eversolo at a lower price. One of my subscribers said I shouldn't use the word no-brainer, but in this case, I really do think I'm going to use that word because that aptly describes the differences between these two products. Regardless of thoughts about single use cases like, for instance, Chromecast, and saying that the product isn't one to be recommended on the basis that a viewer is wanting Chromecast and therefore to equalise the products out, that the Eversolo is somehow just as good as the Cambridge or the other way around because the Cambridge has Chromecast. That is to not properly review, and reviewers that do that, what they're trying to do is reduce products down to being equal in order that they don't have to call out products and say one product is better than another. Obviously there's a case for that, and you can do that when products are close, but I'm confident that if 100 people or 1,000 people came round to my living room and went through these products in the same way that I've done for this review, they'd be finding that 70 to 80% of the time they'd be recommending and buying the Eversolo. So that's the context that you have to look at reviews, and I would be very, very suspicious about reviews or reviewers that seek to all the time reduce products down to being the equal. Flavors of ice cream it's been described as, and it's total nonsense. So what I'm saying is you have to look at the generality of all the features and how many boxes the Eversolo ticks against the Cambridge Audio, as far as considering which reviewer to trust and which reviewers to use as a basis for your shortlist. Also by looking at which reviewers to consistently offer an opinion that everything is the same. This review is slightly backed up by the Andrew Robinson review, who also did the Eversolo CXN100 comparison, albeit in a slightly roundabout read between the lines type way. But I think emphatically the Eversolo is the better product. And if anyone was asking me, Simon, what do I buy? I would clearly say the Eversolo. I just wanted to say that I've got no malice or motives or financial reasons to rate the Eversolo more than this Cambridge Audio. And if it had been the other way around, I would have quite happily done it. One of the reasons that I'm into reviews that people don't quite understand is that I buzz off of being honest and being the ears and eyes for people that watch reviews in a sea of reviews that is untrustworthy and where no comparisons are made, and where I can add value and where I can do these comparisons and truly speak my mind, I'm very, very happy to do so. I hope this review has been useful, and thanks as ever for watching. Please make sure to comment, like and subscribe.